The comments and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect those of their employers, friends, families, or casual acquaintances.
The following program is brought to you in living color on A2B.
And now, the world's second most exciting podcast, Swim Talk A2B, home of lane lines, starting blocks, and clear blue water.
Hello, and welcome to Swim Talk A2B. I'm Dana Abbott, inviting you to join me and Bob Button in another exciting podcast episode coming to you from the Swim Talk A2B World Headquarters right after this.
If you're not a member of the American Swimming Coaches Association, what are you waiting for? ASCA is all about education and support for us swim coaches. Their World Clinic features the top coaches in our sport. Become a member and sign up at swimmingcoach.org.
Bob and I were both caught in the Arctic blast that rolled through the Central Plains in Texas the week beginning around Valentine's Day. So we decided to record this episode without a guest. We wound up with a less time-consuming journey and hope you will be able to stay awake and focused more easily and can forego that seventh cup of coffee. Our topics and targets this week include the annual conference of NISCA, the National Interscholastic Swimming Coaches Association, 2 virtual clinic offerings from ASCA, the American Swimming Coaches Association, high school swimming championships across the United States, the annual National Federation of High School Rule Changes Survey, the reinstatement of a major NCAA Division I swim program that was killed off earlier this year, and a few comments about Title IX and so-called revenue sports. We'll be right back.
I know the NISCA conference information came out today, Dana. I registered for the virtual.
Well, last year we were supposed to be going up to Indianapolis for NCAA Division I meet, which is the site for the NISCA annual general meeting, also called the conference. And then the pandemic hit and the meet was canceled. And after a lot of wrangling, try to figure out if we could still host our conference, we decided that it just wasn't practicable. It was not going to work. And we made very hasty plans for an online conference, and we held it. It worked out fairly well, but with such last minute preparation and trying to get ready for something we'd never had to do before, we didn't have a lot of participation. People weren't able to make plans and connections. So this year we've got a lot of lead time. We're still facing the problem from pandemic travel. We've still got a problem with no spectators being allowed at the NCAA meet, assuming that they're going to go ahead and hold it. We haven't heard otherwise at this point. But the online NISCA conference is going to be fully virtual. We are not going to meet in person, but it's going to be online via Zoom. The virtual conference will be free to attend to NISCA membership.
Tough to beat that price.
Free is free. Dad always told me, he says, take 1 of what's offered and 2 of what's free. And you still need to register, because by registering, you will get an email link to the Zoom meetings. There are some meetings at conference that are closed, such as the audit and the All-America chairs. You cannot have general attendance there, but most of the other meetings are wide open. Voting is by every registered member. They'll have the opportunity for that. Once you've registered and you are a paid NISCA member, you'll be put on the list to receive email containing links to the various Zoom meetings. They are scheduled during the week that the NCAA's is being held, usually in the evenings. The current schedule and the agenda for the meetings is on the NISCA website, which is www.niscaonline, that's NISCA online.org. Now, this year we will be voting for a president-elect and a treasurer and discussing potential changes to the Constitution and bylaws via amendment. So those are some of the things going on with NISCA. I think it's going to be a good conference. It will be different, but last year we had the NISCA conference was virtual. We had the ASCA World Clinic was virtual, and the TISCA, the Texas Interscholastic Swim Coaches Association conference in September, was also virtual. So I think people are getting the hang of it, and it ought to work out just fine.
You mentioned ASCA. I still haven't gotten through the videos from the virtual prepping for championship season. I'm going to go through them all and take notes so I'm ready for any championship seasons coming up I can use it for. And right now they're offering access to it through the end of March for people that didn't sign up yet for just $29. And,
what a deal.
I think that's great. Yeah. And something I think I'm going to also plug something that I mentioned, I think, in an earlier podcast. Summer league coaches. I think we could help them by getting them a little training. And ASCA actually offers something. Who's the Mills boy? I emailed him, and he emailed me right back with this information. I said, this would be great if you guys offered it. And he sent me an email right back. Who is that kid?
That would be Kyle Mills, who's the son of our friend, 1980 Olympian Glenn Mills. The CEO of Go Swim.
He fired something right back to me, and it was exactly what I was looking for. It's called the Summer League Coach. It's an online course ASCA offers. And on top of giving you an online course for your Summer League coaches, it includes a one-year membership, a one-year membership to ASCA. So I think it's great. We know a lot of great young coaches out there. They know their stroke technique. They know how to handle running a workout, and that's not a problem for them. But I think some of the places they could use a little help would be progressions for teaching strokes and starts and turns.
Yeah, there are a lot of summer teams that have returning college swimmers coaching a summer team for a multiple year engagement. You've got some really good high school swimmers who may or may not be club swimmers, but they're looking for work in the summertime. And a lot of them do have some really good backgrounds and they really know what they're doing. But there's also some of those smaller clubs, the newer clubs, where the coaches don't have that experience. And this ASCA Summer League course that you're talking about, this is a great opportunity for them to learn stroke technique and how to manage meets, how to have some fun with their swimmers to reach their fullest potential. This is an ideal course. I think both of us are delighted that ASCA has put something together like this. It's almost like they were reading your mind or stealing your notes or
they all steal my stuff.
All your best stuff. Yeah.
Well, you start the summer out, you see the kids going off the blocks, feet first, or like a crab. But then at the end of the season, they're still doing it. Come on, let's teach them a progression where they learn how to do a forward start. Don't want that stuff going on all season long.
We see some of these younger kids almost stepping into the water because they don't know, they have not been taught how to use both legs to dive in. And they also dive in with their heads up because that's how they learn with mommy and dad. You jump out there, your arms are up, your head's up, mom and dad catch you, and that's their idea of a dive. And one of the things, USA Swimming has a great teaching progression for starts, which I used every year with my high school teams, with my club groups. We make them safe. We make sure that they're not going to have any head injuries or neck injuries with the angle of dive. And there are a lot of progressions that cover almost every aspect of our sports techniques. And
right.
This ought to be another good one.
Yep, and kids are going to get DQ'd early in the season, but by the end of the year, we don't want them still touching the wall with one hand on butterfly and breaststroke. Two or more hands, at least two hands at the same time.
There are 3 seasons for high school in the United States. depending where you live and sometimes just what gender you are. But there's basically a fall season where the championships take place early to mid-November, prior to Thanksgiving. You've got your winter season, which is what we're in here in Texas and a lot of other places. I think the majority are probably in winter seasons. They usually finish up in mid to late February, and then you're going to have a few states that have a spring season finishing up in May. I don't think they go into June, but depends on the calendar and what other problems they've had with their seasons like we're facing this year. But it's been a very, very challenging past 12 months. We got to acknowledge that.
Oh, you bet. Let's segue into the National Federation of High School Rules survey.
Every spring, the National Federation comes out with some proposals for rule changes so they can complicate and obfuscate rules that have previously been complicated and obfuscated. There is a survey that just came out that they're asking people to take part in. I have a copy of it right here. We're going to share that.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. So I will share that. The first thing they do is they want to find out what you think about last year's rules. And what they've asked is that
they're assuming we knew what they were.
Yeah.
People get the rule book and read it.
Part 1, check up on present 2020 to 2021 rules. Were the following rule changes satisfactory? Unfortunately, the only two answers they give you are in a binary form, yes and no. But here they are. Question number 1. The following rule change, adding language to clearly define the end wall. Now, the problem with this survey is they ask you about your opinion of the rule change, but they don't give you the text of the rule change. They expect
so you would
everyone
have to have a rule book.
You have to spend $10 on the rule book. It's not available online that you can go look at it unless somebody has surreptitiously scanned and put up a PDF file someplace. So if you people out there are high school coaches, and you can go ahead and grab your last year's
sponsors too,
this year's rule books, and look at the changes in the front of the book. There was some new language that changed the definition of the end wall or modified it. Second question, defining diving rounds and sessions. Again, this sounds like housekeeping, editing. Somebody had a rule in there. It wasn't real clear, so they tried to come and clear it up again. They tried to de-obfuscate. Yeah. The third question was about permitting an additional mark on suits required by USA Swimming. The fourth one was clarifying the manner in which an official time is obtained. I guess they're not talking about sundials. Number 5.
Candles, calendars.
Yeah, those notched candles with the little lines around the cylinder. Question number 5, describing when the backup system for timing and judging shall be operative. You know, I may be old-fashioned, but I think it should be operative during the race. Number 6, adding article headings to assist with identifying a two-pronged process for entering a diver participating in a championship meet. That language right there is complicated enough.
Too many words and no pictures. I couldn't answer that one.
And there probably would have just been black and white pictures anyway. So anyway, this is what we've got here. That was part 1. Part 2 was asking for observations. Observations were basically, I think you and I discussed this before. I think they're trying to ferret out whether some of the proposed rules affect a wide swath across the country, or if it's somebody that's just got a bone to pick about something local.
Yeah, this bothered me. This upset me, and I went straight to the top over it. Did it bother anyone else?
I'm gonna propose a new rule because I don't like the way this happened at our place. Okay, so question number 1. These are all prefaced by the qualifying question. Have you observed any of the following this year? Number 1, using the ballot system for failure of automatic timing equipment within the past year. Number 2, have you observed not reseeding heats when one of the three competitors does not report to the blocks, leaving only two contestants in the heat? Number 3, have you observed using the time performed during a swim-off versus the time originally achieved in the preliminaries, I guess we're talking about ties here, in order to place a competitor in a subsequent round of competition?
That's a screw up, isn't it? I think I remember that one happening somewhere. Dumb.
Well, here's another one. Have you observed confusion about when the lead swimmer of a relay must be reported to the referee or his/her designee? Number 5.
I want to go back to number 3 in a second, but go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, number 5. Have you observed divers penalized because of an error caused by meet personnel, such as referee or announcer, etc.? Number 3. Your question was about using the time achieved during a swim-off versus the original time, which resulted in a tie necessitating the swim-off. Have you observed?
The original time is what you use, right?
That's right. The swim-off time is simply, who can touch the wall first. You don't even need a watch.
Right. I mean, if you broke a school record with that time, you can use that time. The time counts, but it's not going to change where you're seated. You're still.
That's correct.
Yeah. Again, dumb. Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So part 3 about the rules for 2021-2022. Would you favor 1, defining the terms open and closed pike? Sounds like a diving question to me. Number 2, would you favor mandating practice for divers between sessions during a championship meet? Another diving question. Number 3,
fill it up.
Would you favor permitting a standing dive in high school competition? Another diving question. Well, good for those diving
I
parents.
Can't wait to hear.
I think it was a parent or a coach that put that in there. Question number 4. Would you favor, at a championship meet, permitting a heat to be conducted if fewer than 3 competitors report to the block? Let's answer that one right now. You try to change things and combine and make sure there's at least 3 people in a heat. How much time are you eating up?
Way more than it would have just to swim the doggone thing.
Exactly. And the people in the stands that are looking at those heat sheets, they don't know what's going on. They don't know who the swimmer is.
Good.
So, yeah, I would vote no on that one, but I'm not suggesting anything. Number 5. Would you favor permitting a school to enter more than 4 entries per event when the competitors have met the qualifying standards to compete during a state championship meet?
Oh, you mean loaded up with so the rich get richer?
No,
I got a giant team already.
No, I think they're talking about taking the NCAA track. You can enter everything you're qualified for. When you get to the meet, then you decide which ones you're actually going to swim.
Okay,
I think
it doesn't count until you actually swim it.
Right. The problem, this only would pertain to schools and states and leagues where you advance to the state meet or qualify for it by qualifying time, not by place.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter in Texas.
Yeah.
And Texas is all that really matters. So why do we care about that rule?
Right. And the last question, number 6, would you favor permitting state associations to modify scoring for state championships? We used to have a rules meeting at the NISCA conference where we would take an hour and a half, 2 hours to go over these rule changes. We would discuss them, we would vote on them, and then we would submit them to the National Federation after they had already had their meeting to decide on those rules.
Oh,
oh Lord! Yeah. What a mess we get into when we start.
One event
in
the
coaches,
program, and it takes up half the rule book.
When we swim coaches get into discussions about diving, we can really mess things up. But I'm tired of talking about these rule changes. If you want to take part in the 2021 National Federation Swimming and Diving Rules Questionnaire, and you are a NISCA member, you have already gotten an email with a link to provide your input. But that's all there is. This is not as extensive as it has been in previous years. Could it be that they're running out of rules to modify and obfuscate? We'll never know. Okay, well, that's all I have to say about Federation Rules Questionnaire for this year. I'm sure they'd appreciate your participation, regardless of any belittling or making fun of that Bob and I have done here. Federation is a great organization, but we just get a little confused sometimes about how certain rules get included or even proposed. What's next?
Are we going to talk about the water polo rule? No. Hey, no.
No, I was listen, I was looking over the tenets of the establishment of Swim Talk, and down in part 3, article 17, subsection 32, thou shalt not mention water polo. So don't go there.
I'll go to my corner. Time out after this.
When we talk about diving, the diving coaches just feel this great indignation because of the way we talk about it. You have a quote about moral indignation, I believe.
Yeah. Dwight McDonald said this, and it's kind of also going to lead us into our next discussion also. It's kind of
who is Dwight McDonald?
Some guy.
Oh, that guy. He's a dead guy. Another dead guy that we remember for things he said.
But I liked his quote. I don't know about his politics.
It's pretty sharp, though.
His quote was great. He said, I can work up a moral indignation quicker than a fat tennis player can work up a sweat. And that's kind of like nowadays in the cancel culture, you don't know who you've offended, but there's no doubt that they're going to let you know, and you'll be canceled tomorrow. So here we go.
At least he didn't
tread lightly on the next topic.
A fat tennis player working up a sweat. I've never known any fat tennis players, but
go over to the country club. Just go over to the country club.
There we go. Well, why would we be waking up moral indignation in anyone right now?
Because we're going to discuss the Iowa women's swim program and the fact that it's been reinstated, and that should be one of those places where you put in the yay sound effect.
So they dropped men's and women's.
Yes,
but then they ran into a headwind of protest.
Yes, and lawsuit. Title IX lawyers got involved and said, you can't drop our women. Maybe they didn't quite say it that way, but they got after it, and the school is bringing back the women, which is, as you would say,
50% right is still 100% wrong.
Well, for a minute, I thought you'd forgotten your line. But that's true. That's true. There's two issues involved here. The one issue where people start saying, hey, yeah, revenue and non-revenue. Swimming's a non-revenue sport. You're lucky you have it. Yes, we are. Fortunate we have athletics in college, period, let alone a sport that doesn't bring in revenue. But here's a fact. The other sports don't bring in revenue either. Outside of a sport like Duke basketball, Syracuse basketball, Ohio State, Texas football, outside of those types of schools and those types of sports, everything else is non-revenue.
Here's something I don't get. The places where they've dropped men's and women's swimming and don't bring any of them back, apparently there's nothing we can do about that. Where they've dropped men's and women's and then brought women's back, like at Iowa, one of the problems they had there, and I just saw this on the news today, the women are not dropping their Title IX lawsuit. And I think the athletic director jaw dropped. What do you mean? We brought back the women. You're still going forward with your lawsuit? Well, yes, sir. And I'm not sure. I didn't read deep enough. I didn't drill down into it to find the reasons. But I'll tell you this, and this has happened at a number of schools. And I think you and I have mentioned this on a previous podcast, but our good friend, Chuck Warner, who used to coach at Rutgers University up in New Jersey, had a good women's team and a good men's team. And they dropped the men's team and the women got worse. And the women will tell you they train harder. They enjoy the camaraderie. They enjoy the competitive spirit when a men's team exists with them, assuming they're getting the same access to the water and the same access to good coaching, same competitive opportunities, but they just do better when there are men around. I think it was you that pointed out to me that of the top 10 women's teams at NCAA D1, not one of them was a women-only swim sport.
Yeah, if you look down through the last several years, I mean, you have to go. I think UCLA once in a while will crack the top 20 in women as a women-only program because they dropped their men long ago. You'll rarely find, even in the top 20, a D1 school that doesn't have a men's and women's program, have a women program in the top 20 at D1 NCAAs. Very rare. You just don't find one without the other anymore. It just doesn't happen.
They're very complementary programs. They can support each other. I mean, you go to a school with men's and women's team, and the men have a meet that's not alternating men and women. You've got a men against men at one school, and then the women versus women from the same or another school.
Right.
And you're going to find the women swimmers in the stands cheering their male counterparts on, and vice versa. The guys will come and cheer on the women, and they know that they've got the support, and they do better.
And we're talking,
this is being taken away from them, and it's not right.
And we're mentioning it at D1 level. Look at Kutztown. That's a D2 Pennsylvania school. As soon as they dropped their men, the women started to disappear off, and then they were a powerhouse program, men and women. It just happens across the board at every level. Let me jump back real quick to the revenue thing. Conferences for basketball and NCAA too, for basketball and football, the way they make it a revenue sport for those two sports is with TV money, and they share it with the schools within their conferences and within the NCAA, so they can call those revenue sports. But if you look at the individual school, they don't possibly can't possibly be a revenue sport at that school. Okay, most of those schools, they're bleeding red ink in their athletic department. So to say that they're revenue sports at those schools, no, so stop. These swim teams hardly are a drop in the bucket in the athletic department that they're cutting when they say that it's money. When they say it's Title IX, well, let's look at schools. Let's look at the three-prong test. Three-prong test is very simple. The first, you can prove that you're meeting Title IX, any one of these three prongs, any one of them. Number one, number of male and female athletes substantially proportionate with their respective enrollment in school, undergrad. That's the one that's usually used. Number two, the school has a history of and continuing practice of expanding participation opportunities for the underrepresented sex. And number three, institution is fully and effectively accommodating the interests and abilities of the underrepresented sex. I'd say that last one's probably the toughest one to prove if you're the school. I'd say the second one is very easy to prove, but for some reason, the schools don't use it. They knuckle under and they use number one, and the Title IX attorneys bully them into it when they're a little bit out of proportion. Proportionality is what we call prong one. When proportionality, the attorneys come in and they say, hey, we're going to hit you with proportionality. The schools knuckle under, and boom, who gets the money? Attorneys get the money, and the men's sport gets dropped.
Yeah, well, let me throw this out at you. Let's just pick a round number. Let's say there are 4,000 undergraduates, and they're the only ones we're going to consider as participants in the athletic program. 4,000, and 2,000 are men, 2,000 are women. And they say, okay, so it has to be 50-50.
Mhm.
Well, what if there are, out of that 2,000 of each gender, suppose there are 200 men that want to participate in athletics, but there's only 100 women.
Doesn't matter.
The other
Doesn't
1,900
matter.
women don't care.
Doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't
That
matter.
would be
That's the
that would be
problem.
the third prong. You would survey. But that's the tough one, because you would say the interest is there with the men. The attorneys will just rip you on it, so the schools won't do that. You and I, we know that would be fine, but it gets torn apart.
I'm going to drop the bomb here and go out and touch that third rail. If they took football out of the equation, everything would be different, way different, because there is nothing, absolutely nothing that's analogous to football. And they have the largest teams and the most male participation.
You're
We've
right.
certainly got our own ideas and thoughts about programs being dropped, but I think our listeners might have some thoughts. What do you think?
Before we go there, I got to tell you something about this. There's more to this Iowa story. Okay. Now, when we talk about prong 2, expanding opportunities, North Texas did that. North Texas has only women swimming. They added that. It's not like they cut men. They never had a swim team. They added women. So they used prong 2, which was a smart thing. Good for North Texas. They never cut men swimming. They never had any swimming. They added women. So they did a Title IX thing the right way. They didn't cut men like U of H did. They didn't cut men like Rice did. Now, back to Iowa. Do you know that Iowa is going to drop the men? They're going to bring back the women, but they're going to refuse the offer from these people that want to fund women's wrestling. They want to add a women's program, and this offer would have been to add women's wrestling so that we could keep men's swimming and fund it. The athletic director refuses. How about that? How about that, Dana?
You don't know what's going through their minds, and we don't know what's going through the minds of our listeners. However,
if you'd like to share comments or experience with us about programs being dropped, drop us a short email at swimtalk@outlook.com with a brief description of your thoughts. If selected, we'll contact you with details on joining us for an upcoming episode.
In fact, if you'd like to be a guest or suggest someone to be one of our future victims of intense interrogation,
but without the bright lights, verbal abuse, and a few swings of a heavy-duty phone book,
drop us a line. What was that email address again?
It's swimtalk@outlook.com.
Let us hear from you. That's swimtalk, no punctuation, no spaces, @outlook.com. We will be checking our mailbox. Telephone directory? Really? Jeez.
What do you think that one's going to be? On a scale of 1 to 10, a 1 or a 2?
Thanks for joining us on another adventure into the Twilight Zone of podcast, otherwise known as Swim Talk A2B. We don't know how you found us for this wild goose chase, but we hope if you get lost again or have run out of useful and productive things to do, you'll be able to follow the breadcrumbs back to this pit of verbal quicksand and immerse yourself into our mental sensory deprivation tank. You won't emerge feeling newly alive and refreshed, but what were you expecting for free? We'll see you next time.